The briefing room at Halverson Airfield was a sterile box of light and hum, ringed by flight crews and lit screens. Wind scratched faintly at the steel walls, a reminder of the cold ocean beyond the runways. The mission board at the front flickered once before stabilizing. Blue text blinking into place. This was the final briefing before the transatlantic intercept drill. Tanker crews, AWACS, and fighter leads sat in rows. Clipped voices confirming call signs, routing windows, and emergency alternates. Callie Ross sat near the edge of the second row, her posture upright, uniform sharp, hands folded over a slim notebook she hadn't opened. Her blonde hair was pulled back cleanly. She didn't fidget. She didn't speak. She listened. The lead ops officer called out the primary refuel slot KC-135 Alpha assigned to Captain Danner, a younger pilot known for fast comms and fast hands. A murmur of nods swept through the room. No objection. No discussion. When Callie's aircraft appeared, it blinked in gray text, "Support. Non-essential." Her co-pilot glanced at her and said nothing. No one explained the reassignment. No one had to. The implication hung in the air, polite and absolute. She was too slow for real-time ops, too measured. Not the kind of pace this drill wanted. Callie didn't flinch. She didn't even look at the screen. When the final checklist was reviewed, her name was never mentioned. She stood when it ended, nodded to no one, and walked out as quietly as she had entered. Outside, the wind was sharper. A gust pulled at the edge of her collar. She straightened it with one clean motion and kept walking, her boots silent against the floor. Behind her, the board reset. Her seat was already forgotten. The mission operations hangar at Halverson Airfield was quiet, but not still. Screens blinked along the far wall, their glow reflecting off the metallic surfaces. Rows of chairs were filled with air crews in different uniforms, patches stitched with NATO flags and squadron insignias. The overhead lights hummed. Every voice was clipped and efficient, the rhythm of professionals running on checklists and compressed sleep. Callie Ross entered without ceremony. She didn't scan the room. She knew where she belonged, back row, left side, among the KC-135 crews. Her flight suit was spotless, zipped high. She held her binder low and didn't speak as she sat. The pilots around her were mostly men, younger, louder, already trading quiet jokes and commentary as the final brief kicked off. The holographic mission map activated, projecting a translucent arc of the Atlantic across the center of the room. Colored call signs hovered above it, red for fighters, green for tankers, blue for AWACS. A voice came over the speaker. It belonged to Colonel Vance, the mission lead. Primary slot, KC-135 Alpha. "Captain Danner," he said, gesturing to the green dot holding station midpoint in the air corridor. "Congratulations. Captain, this op demands tempo, and I trust your team can keep it tight." Danner stood with a nod and a practiced grin. Someone clapped softly. One of the F-22 pilots leaned sideways and whispered, "Fast hands win midair. Let's not get stuck behind a coffee-paste checklist." A few chuckles followed. Callie kept her expression neutral. She didn't turn. The joke wasn't about anyone by name. It didn't have to be. The briefing continued. Altitudes were reviewed, handoff points clarified, emergency alternates listed. When the next tanker assignment appeared, the call sign blinked in gray. KC-135 Charlie Ross. Support, non-essential, loiter status only. Colonel Vance didn't look her way. "Ross, you'll hold south of the main envelope. We don't expect to call you in, but stay sharp." It was said casually, as if it were routine. But it wasn't. She had flown that corridor 3 times. She'd trained with the squadron, drilled the emergency handoffs, reviewed every altitude table. She knew the ops flow backward, and still, she was moved to the fringe. Her co-pilot didn't speak. He tapped something on his kneeboard, then gave a small shrug. No one looked at her. The operations tablet passed from one officer to another at the front of the room. Her name appeared briefly, then was swiped away. "Any concerns from tankers?" Vance asked. Captain Danner cleared his throat. Just one. Weather on the forward route's gonna stack turbulence into our window. We'll hold firm, but if anyone lags behind. Another pilot cut in, chuckling. Make sure the checklist crew doesn't cause a pileup. The room gave a few polite laughs. One of the AWACS officers smirked. It's not just about procedure today. Folks, you either keep pace or you're noise. Callie didn't move. Her pen remained still in her hand. The binder on her lap was closed. She didn't shift. She didn't sigh. She absorbed it all like static on the far edge of the room. All right then, Vance said. Clear skies above 12,000. Turbulence starting westbound after handoff. We launch on staggered schedule in 90. Dismissed. Chairs scraped the floor. Flight leads moved quickly. Some in groups. Some already tapping into private comms or adjusting gear. Callie stood slowly. She didn't look at the hologram. Her name was already fading. Non-essential. No one asked her opinion. No one asked her anything at all. She exited the hangar into the cold. The tarmac stretched wide under the overcast sky. Ahead of her, one KC-135 was already being prepped by crew chiefs. Ladders up, fuel lines hissing. The jets were lined in staggered rows beyond, canopies open, engines still quiet. It was a machine about to wake. She walked alone. Her boots struck the pavement softly, swallowed by wind. Her own aircraft sat parked at the edge of the strip, near a de-ice station. It looked like it had been forgotten there. The flight line speakers began to call pre-launch orders, one by one. Pilots and crews jogged across the concrete. Names echoed faintly. Call signs flashed. A row of F-22s taxied out, their sleek forms turning toward the ready lanes. Callie climbed the ladder to her jet without assistance. No one saluted. No one asked how she felt. There were no remarks. Not even her co-pilot said anything as he followed her up. She ran her hand along the inside of the hatch before sealing it. Behind her, a fighter rolled past. Another followed, and another. She was last, and no one was watching. The hangar on the north side of Halverson Airfield stood in quiet contrast to the buzz of the flight line. Only a few overhead lights hummed above the wide concrete bay, casting long shadows between the parked equipment and idle vehicles. The air was cool, edged with the scent of salt and metal. Outside, the wind drifted low fog across the runway, thinning around the edges of the parked aircraft like mist pulling away from steel. Callie sat alone at a folding table in the rear of the hangar. The other crews had moved on, eaten, briefed, gone to quarters or passed around stories of past flights. No one lingered here. Her crew binder sat open in front of her. She flipped through its pages one by one, eyes steady, hands clean, movement deliberate. Each page was marked in her own ink, small notes in tight handwriting, color-coded tabs, no smudges. She wasn't slow. She never had been, but she never rushed. Rushing built habits. Habits built mistakes. And 30,000 feet above cold ocean with another aircraft on the boom was no place for mistakes. She read through the emergency fuel sequence again, then cross-checked it with the laminated transfer chart, folded neatly beside her. Red lines marked max flow bands and cold weather thresholds. She paused, adjusted the altitude offset by 200 feet, and retabbed the page. The hangar remained still. Somewhere outside, a vehicle rolled past with a low rumble. She didn't look up. The cockpit of her KC-135 was visible through the far window, its nose faintly lit under a single pole lamp. Its frame was large, still, and waiting. She turned the page and ran her fingers along the highlighted fields. One by one, she recited each item in her mind: sequence, timing, communications, control transfer, manual override, pressure compensation, boom stow. She reached the bottom and stopped, then flipped back and did it again. Some would have called it compulsive, but to Callie, it was currency. Preparation bought clarity, clarity bought control, and in the sky, control was everything. A gust rattled the door behind her. The pages lifted slightly, then settled. She closed the binder with care and placed it into her flight bag. The hangar lights ticked as the temperature dropped a degree. She stood without sound. Her boots made no echo as she crossed the floor, her shadow stretching long behind her as she passed through the last beam of overhead light. Outside, the fog thinned enough to show the tarmac's edge. Her aircraft sat in its lane, bathed in amber from the security lamps above. The stairs had already been lowered. She approached with no rush, no drag. Her pace was even. The cold touched her cheeks and caught the ends of her hair where they slipped from beneath her collar. She didn't brush it back. The KC-135 loomed above her, silent and dark. It had been fueled hours ago. Others had passed it without a second glance, eyes fixed on sleeker frames, louder assignments, but it stood just the same, waiting, patient, exactly where it was told to be. She climbed the ladder. At the top, she stepped into the cockpit and rested her hand on the side panel for a moment. Not sentiment, just connection. The switches were cool under her fingers. She flipped two, just enough to bring the flight displays to life. They blinked once, then held steady. A soft hum filled the space. She sat in the left seat, adjusted nothing, and stared out through the glass into the misted dark. No one had asked her to be ready. No one was checking in. She was here anyway. Her eyes traced the edge of the instrument panel, then down to the throttle housing, then to the trim wheel. Her breathing stayed even. She would fly this aircraft exactly as it was meant to be flown. And if no one ever saw it, that changed nothing. Out on the tarmac, a second row of jets began lining up. Their lights blinked through the fog, sharp and far away. Callie reached for the flight computer. There was nothing to prove, only the mission. The North Atlantic was a wall of gray. At 30,000 feet, the cloud deck reached upward in heavy tiers, folding in on itself like wet canvas. Visibility had dropped steadily for the past hour, but now it was nearly gone. Rain turned to sleet across the upper levels, and wind shear pulsed in irregular jolts. Thunderheads loomed, tall and shifting, their cores lit from within by slow flashes of heat lightning. The sky wasn't falling apart, but it was thinking about it. Inside the lead KC-135, Captain Danner's voice cut through the secure frequency, tight and clipped, boom arms icing, no lock. First fighter waved off. The controller's reply came fast. Confirm failure. Confirm. Lock cylinders frozen. Can't hold position in this chop. The channel went quiet for 2 seconds. Then another voice layered in an F-22 pilot. Low on fuel. We're red on time. 2 minutes to bingo. We need an option. The drill wasn't a game. This was a multinational intercept rehearsal, and the F-22s needed mid-air fuel to complete their loop before rerouting through Greenland. If they diverted now, the mission would be scrubbed. The intercept pattern collapsed. Dozens of hours of prep gone. The entire drill would become a logistical ghost. Looking for alt tanker? Hold your current vector, the controller said. Screens on the ground flicked through range options, but everything airborne was too far, or committed elsewhere. The remaining jets couldn't stretch fuel long enough to wait. Callie's KC-135 sat in loiter hold, 70 nautical miles southeast of the envelope. Her radar screen pulsed faintly under her fingertips. No lightning, no turbulence. The cloud was thick, but clean. Her checklist was still open on the side panel, a yellow tab marking Refuel Start Sequence. She adjusted one dial on the cabin pressure indicator and toggled the radio. Halverson Control, this is Charlie 2-1. She said, my airframe is clean. I can take the slot. There was a pause. She heard muffled comms in the background, controllers conferring with Mission Command. Then the reply, copy, Charlie 2-1. Confirm ability to proceed solo into turbulence and recover refuel slot. I confirm, she said. Her co-pilot glanced over. His hand hovered near the manual defog switch, eyes fixed on the checklist she hadn't closed. You're not seriously volunteering for this. She didn't look at him. I am, she said. Push the data. Tell them to form up. He didn't argue. He toggled the system to transmit, loaded their track, and synced with the F-22's last ping. Callie adjusted throttle manually, turned 15 degrees to port, and eased the KC-135 into the storm's lower edge. Lightning cracked through the cloud layer above. The aircraft rocked once, then settled. Rain streaked the windows at an angle, and static hissed through the radio. Charlie 2-1 now assuming refuel slot, came the call. Callie didn't speak. She slid the checklist aside, reached for the boom deploy console, and locked her elbows in place. The noise from the sky was constant now, but inside the cockpit, it was smooth, focused, still. One by one, the F-22s changed bearing. Their transponders flicked closer. Through the windshield, nothing but mist. "Boom arm unlocked," she said. The green light flashed once, fuel transfer standing by. "First fighter visual," said her co-pilot. A dark form emerged out of cloud like a ghost, sleek, angular, hovering at textbook approach angle. The fighter edged forward. Rain clung to its canopy. Its wing dipped slightly, then held steady. Callie adjusted trim. Her voice was calm. "Maintain current altitude. Reduce airspeed by 0.5. The F-22 pilot complied without question. Her boom extended. The tip aligned. Just before contact, a crosswind knocked them both half a degree off. She adjusted throttle by fingertip and corrected pitch. The boom reconnected. "Fuel flowing," her co-pilot said. The pressure gauge ticked upward. The first fighter stabilized. Inside the cockpit, the fuel system lights turned green. "One down. Next fighter is closing," came the voice over comms. She nodded. "Hold current approach. Maintain alignment window. Deploying boom." The process repeated. Steady, measured, clean. Fuel transferred. Lights turned green. The radar lit with soft pulses. No alerts. Outside, the thunder rolled in long sheets across the upper atmosphere, but Callie flew level. Her focus never wavered. Every adjustment was precise. Every command given without tension. She didn't race the storm. She moved inside it. The third F-22 approached slower, its fuel margin nearly critical. The pilot's voice was tight. "I'm red on airspeed. Coming in light." "Hold, Vector. Now keep her nose up," Callie said. "You're fine." The aircraft drifted a half-meter high. She made no comment, just adjusted boom angle and compensated pitch with 2 small corrections. "Contact." Fuel flowed. Silence followed. The fighter pilot whispered, not over main comms but privately, "She brought us home." Callie didn't respond. The final F-22 held position behind her tanker. Lightning flashed to the west, turning the entire sky white for half a breath, then darkness again. Her voice was steady. "Extend boom. Final pass. Let's finish it." The KC-135 held formation. The F-22 closed in. Wind clawed at the tail. Rain lashed the fuselage. The boom connected. Green light. Fuel flowing. No one spoke. Then the controller's voice cut through. "Mission complete. All aircraft topped. Callie Ross, you've held the corridor. Return to base." She nodded once, turned the aircraft gently. Outside her window, the storm began to clear. Inside the KC-135, the cabin lights flickered once, briefly dimming as another layer of turbulence passed beneath them. Callie didn't flinch. She kept her eyes forward, her left hand on the throttle, right hand steady on the control panel. The storm outside flashed with irregular light, lightning pulsing far off the port side in pale bursts. Rain hissed across the windows like static. Visibility was a murky gray wash, broken only by the occasional shadow of a forming jet. She held the tanker level, altitude locked, airspeed exact, pitch unchanged. The radar pinged softly, identifying the first of 4 F-22s forming behind her. She adjusted nothing. The fighter appeared in the corner of her windshield, dark, sharp, wings steady. It moved like a shadow stitched to her airframe. "Charlie 2-1, ready to extend boom," she said. There was no hesitation in her voice, only clarity. The co-pilot monitored systems silently. Callie engaged the control toggle, guiding the boom arm down. The system responded cleanly. Green lights lit one by one. She spoke into the comms again. "Maintain bearing. You're cleared to approach." The fighter adjusted. Callie watched the boom alignment on the secondary display. No drift, no roll. She tapped 2 pressure controls, manually fine-tuning the arm's resistance to compensate for crosswind. Her touch was minimal, exact. Contact. Fuel began to transfer. The gauge ticked upward, a single number climbing slowly. Inside the cockpit, the only sound was the low hum of systems and the whisper of airflow through vents. The fighter's pilot said nothing over the shared channel. He didn't need to. Boom retraction was smooth. The system cleared. "Next aircraft, hold 2 meters off. Match altitude. Extend boom," she said. Her voice never rose. Every word was delivered the same measured, instructional, final. The next F-22 took position. The cockpit lights flickered again. A second bolt of lightning rolled across the sky outside, turning the inside of the aircraft briefly blue-white. The turbulence returned for 3 seconds, then passed. Callie made no correction. She had already accounted for the buffer. The boom aligned again. The lock engaged. The system light blinked green. Fuel transferred. Exact rate. No anomalies. 2 complete, said her co-pilot quietly. Callie nodded once. Maintain tempo. No pause between slots. The third jet pulled in tighter. The pilot's voice came through low. "I'm riding redline on flow. Coming in soft." "Hold approach," Callie said. "Maintain current glide. I have you." The fighter dipped slightly. Uneven. She compensated with a 2-degree yaw correction and a touch of airspeed modulation. The boom found its mark without resistance. Lock. Fuel flowed. No celebration, no noise. The pilot exhaled on open comms, not directed at anyone. "She flies like it's wired into her hands." No one replied. The fourth fighter held its position at distance. Callie checked the gauges. Tank stability was holding. Her checklist was still open on the lower panel, untouched since the first call. She gave the order. Final pass. Approach clean. Confirm alignment. The F-22 moved in. The wind struck hard once, throwing a ripple down the tanker's body. The KC-135 bounced, dipped a hair, but Callie made no dramatic corrections. She moved 1 dial, rebalanced thrust, held steady. The final boom lock clicked in. The fuel counter began its climb. Callie stared at the monitor, watching each unit tick downward. The system remained clean. The sky continued to flash, but inside her cockpit, it was still controlled, surgical. This wasn't rescue, it wasn't recovery, it was precision. They had mocked her for pace, for process, for clarity. But now, it was the only thing keeping them in the air. The light on the boom turned amber. Final transfer complete. She retracted the arm. The lock disengaged. Systems cooled. "Fighters fueled. Refuel segment complete," came a voice over comms. She acknowledged with a calm, steady tone. "Charlie 2-1 returning to base." No one spoke for a moment. Then her voice, quiet, final. "RTB." She turned the aircraft east. The storm stretched behind her, wide and wild. She left it without looking back. The late afternoon sun broke weakly through the fading clouds above Halverson Airfield. Puddles reflected the pale gold light that skimmed across the concrete, warming nothing but illuminating everything. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled of rain and jet fuel. The tower was packed. Controllers leaned forward in their chairs. Personnel lined the windows. Outside, small clusters had formed across the tarmac. Crew chiefs, fuel teams, AWACS techs, F-22 pilots with helmets in hand. None of them spoke. They all waited. Callie's KC-135 came into view low on the horizon, its profile wide and familiar. The approach was slow, smooth, even. Its gear came down without fanfare. The aircraft landed with almost no bounce, tires kissing the runway with practiced restraint. The plane rolled forward into its assigned lane, cutting a clean path through the remaining mist. When it stopped, engines cycling down into silence, the crowd at the edge of the landing pad didn't move. Her aircraft was the last to return. The others had touched down over an hour ago, refueled, processed, quietly debriefed. But this one was different. Word had spread, not through announcements, not through official comms, just through the way people moved. How eyes shifted, how no one could quite look away from the flight board now glowing at the hangar entrance. The line next to her name no longer blinked. It showed in bold green complete. Callie powered down the cockpit. Her co-pilot said nothing. He had barely spoken since their final turn east. He kept glancing toward the tower, as if unsure whether the silence outside was calm or consequence. She removed her headset, secured her gear, and stood. The ladder was already in place. She opened the hatch and stepped out. A gust caught the edge of her collar. The sky above had softened to a colorless blue, stretched thin after hours of cloud. Across the tarmac, dozens of figures had turned to face the KC-135. No one called out. No one gestured. They simply stood watching. She descended the ladder without pause. Her boots touched the concrete. Then she straightened. Calm. Unreadable. A small group of airmen stood nearby. They didn't salute at first. They looked unsure, like they hadn't been briefed on what to do with someone who'd rewritten a mission mid-air. The first to step forward was the F-22 squadron commander. Earlier that morning, he'd barely looked her way in the operations room. His remarks had gone to the chosen crews. His posture had mirrored the room's assumption she was a backup, support, outside the main arc of action. Now, he walked toward her with helmet tucked under his arm. His expression was tight, but composed. He stopped 2 steps in front of her. She met his eyes. Not cold, not confrontational, just still. He raised his hand and gave a full, proper salute. Then he spoke clearly, so everyone within reach could hear. "She's the reason we're all standing here." The line held in the air. No one interrupted. No one filled the silence. Then he turned to face the waiting crews, F-22 pilots, tanker teams, logistics officers who'd monitored every failed attempt from the tower. A dozen uniforms, a dozen expressions, some stunned, some cautious, a few with something like regret. He spoke again, this time to them. "That's your new standard." There were no cheers, no claps on the back, just a long, heavy shift in the air. Something recalibrated in real time. All those who had looked past her that morning now saw her at the center of the operation, not because she had claimed the spotlight, but because there was no longer a way to write the story without her. The commander stepped back, no more words. He didn't linger. Callie remained in place. Her aircraft behind her steamed faintly in the cooling air. The boom arm was still slick with rain, tucked back in place but gleaming in the light. Crew members began moving again, slowly. A few from the fuel team formed a line, not stiff, not ceremonial, but intentional. One by one, they waited their turn to shake her hand. She accepted each gesture without a word. One of the younger techs nodded with a look that landed between apology and awe. Another simply said, "Clean work, ma'am." That was enough. Inside the tower, someone updated the mission log. Her name was now listed beside all 4 F-22 tail numbers, 4 confirmed refuels, 0 errors, 0 corrections, 1 line held alone in the storm. Back on the ground, Captain Danner stood off to the side. He hadn't spoken since her approach. He had no clipboard now, no quick grin, no casual banter with the other pilots. When Callie passed within 10 feet of him, he looked down. He didn't meet her eyes. He didn't try to. She didn't slow. She walked past him the same way she had walked out of the briefing that morning, with steady steps, shoulders squared, expression unreadable. But this time, the silence around her didn't mean dismissal. It meant no one dared to interrupt what she had done. At the edge of the operations hangar, she paused and looked back at the KC-135. The aircraft stood quietly on its pad, the last one in, the last one home. She turned again and walked inside. Behind her, the airfield kept moving, but not like before. Something fundamental had changed. The hierarchy hadn't shifted, it had realigned. And at the center of it was no speech, no celebration. Only performance, only precision, only the person who delivered what no one else could. The floodlights along the edge of the flight line burned through the dusk, casting long shadows across the wet tarmac. The storm had broken, leaving the air washed clean and silent. Far behind her, the KC-135 rested cold and quiet, its engines silent, its boom arm tucked beneath the tail like a blade sheathed after use. Water streaked down the fuselage in thin lines. There was no motion, no ceremony. Callie stood at the base of the ladder, helmet in one hand. Her other hand rested calmly at her side. The wind pushed lightly through her hair, catching loose strands and shifting the collar of her flight suit. The lights from the tower glinted off the wet concrete, but no voices followed them. The windows were lit, but still, no one called out. No one moved. She wasn't waiting for anything. The mission was over. The sky had spoken. The room had turned. And now, in the aftermath, there was nothing left to prove. She took one breath. Just one. Then turned her eyes back toward the aircraft. No sound followed her. She stood in the silence she had earned, and no one dared to break it. Sometimes the strongest presence in the room is the one that says nothing at all. Callie was never loud. She never needed attention. She was overlooked, underestimated, and passed over by a system that valued flash over focus. But when the sky turned dangerous and every plane unraveled, it was her calm, her precision, her quiet resolve that carried the mission home. This was never about proving anyone wrong. It was about doing what needed to be done, exactly when it mattered most. In a world that often confuses silence with weakness, Callie reminded us that being unseen doesn't mean being unworthy. It means being ready when no one else is. If her story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in stories of quiet strength and real character, follow for more. There's power in stillness, and we're just getting started.